It is completely un-American for government to step in and prevent Americans from earning money in a flexible and modern way. As in most cases of government intervention, what starts with good intentions often leads to unnecessary suffering. A majority of Uber and Lyft drivers drive as a side gig from their full-time job. Lyft says 90% of its drivers work less than 20 hours a week, with about 70% of Uber and Lyft drivers working an average of only 10 to 15 hours per week. The government has no place in making decisions for private businesses. That is the basis of America's capitalist economy, which has made our country so successful. The more the federal government gets involved with private companies, the more it will hurt the individual, and the less money these individuals will be able to make. There is nothing wrong with working as an independent contractor in America today, where you can work your own hours and earn a little extra money on the side.
Regarding Uber drivers being employees and the new headlines coming out of California as of yesterday, as the president of the data union, I'm regularly in contact with activist groups on the ground there, like the Gig Is Up economy, which are organizations that aim to collectivize or unionize in an informal way gig economy workers. I am not a fan of or an advocate for turning Uber drivers or Lyft drivers or anyone else in the gig economy into employees. And I think that the dichotomy of employee versus employer is an old and antiquated one. I think that Uber drivers, as all gig economy participants, create value in the data that they provide these companies, along with the consumers that create value in the data that they provide these companies. And I think as Uber drivers in particular's input to Uber's economic productivity is relevant per their data, that they're entitled to an equity stake in Uber. So I'm more of a fan of California mandating that Uber owes a data dividend to every single Uber driver, because they are building their nest egg on these people's lives, their personhood, their blood, sweat, and tears, and quite frankly, their personal data.
Hello and welcome back to another Millennial Minute. Today's topic, are Uber drivers and Lyft drivers, for that matter, employees? You've already heard from our panelist, Morgan Zegers. She's the CEO of Young Americans Against Socialism, and James Felton Keith, author of Inclusionism, founder of the Data Union, and friend of Bold. So, California is trying to shut down Uber and Lyft. James, good idea or bad idea?
It's not a bad idea if there are... What do you mean by shut down? Dude, come on.
They are trying to shut them down.
So look, I don't think, per the headlines, it is a bad idea to turn Uber drivers per government mandate into employees. Uber drivers should be made stakeholders in the overall value of Uber because of how they contribute their data, which is more laborious than their actual driving.
So they should not be employees? They should still be freelancers?
I think freelancers is the proper way that they should engage them.
Okay, so Morgan, this is not the policy of California. California wants to force Uber and Lyft to make everyone an employee, which of course would significantly increase the cost of getting a ride.
Yeah, and what makes me worried, Lyft talked about this, that 4 out of 5 drivers don't want this legislation. They don't want these restrictions. They like how it goes. And only 1 out of 5 people want this. And so why appeal to the far extremes? And why make so many people suffer when they just want a flexible work hour?
So, James,
Appreciate that you said extremes and not left.
Yeah, so James, California tends to be a living laboratory for, the left, because it's the home of progressivism.
I don't know that they are.
They're not. So you feel like this is
I reject that notion. Arnold
they-
Schwarzenegger was the governor there like a few ticks ago.
Yeah, it was a few ticks ago. But do you think why are they misguided with this specific policy?
I think it bleeds into how and this is, I think, more generational than anything else. I think it bleeds into how boomers and their generation, who are really the generation in political power right now, how they see regulating institutions, specifically for-profit institutions, how they would like to unionize in those institutions, how they would like to tax those institutions. And it makes me think about the conversations that we have around antitrust right now. They're totally misguided. As the world has become a supply chain and everything has automated, specific to Uber and everything else, the best way to redistribute value in this economy is to distribute income as a measure of input to these companies' productivity or these companies' profit.
So give them stock.
Wages. I mean, I think there are a lot of ways that you could create warrants. It could be a certain sort of stock option. I'm a fan of a data dividend structure that I published during my run for U.S. Congress that will require these institutions to create a new stakeholder class next to the shareholder class to compensate them for their, again, input to profitability.
So, Morgan, you take issue with the government being involved in private companies' decisions, I imagine. So why would you have an issue with what James here is proposing?
Well, I appreciate your ideas, and I just don't think it's government's role to step in at all. And what really is frustrating is that I think these California politicians are coming from a place of privilege when they say that they want to prevent people from being able to earn a little cash on the side, whether it's the single mothers, whether it's the people who are in college and trying to have that flexible ability to earn extra income. And so I really do think it comes from a place of privilege to say, this isn't good for you. I know what's better for you. And I'm
James, you can speak to this experience better than I can, of course. You grew up uptown. You are a black male. Supposedly, before ride sharing, it was hard to get a ride uptown, wasn't it?
So I used to visit uptown. I was born and raised in Detroit, a way worse town than uptown, and we didn't have taxis at all. But yes, it was hard to get a ride. Again, I think the sharing economy, Lyft, and then Uber coming after it have been great innovations in how we streamline, how we distribute resources around the community, privately owned resources, that is, around the community. So, yes, there's been a whole lot of social mobility and social good that has propelled progress because of how technology is interacting in society. And it's overall a good thing. The only problem with how we exist in the 21st century is how we distribute equity in the productivity of the economy. We are 200 times as productive today than we were 50 years ago, and wages are where they were 50 years ago. Our fix will not be increasing people's wages. The majority of Uber drivers that I ride with are teachers in my neighborhood, and they just can't afford to not drive Uber. And so as it is the case, I think we have to start talking about, and I think this is the work of millennials and Gen Zers, if that's how they're coining themselves. I'm not familiar with the language yet, but the deal is we have to be advocating for a new sort of income to couple the wages that we're making. And it should come from the fact that we are the most micro input to all corporate productivity. We have evidence of that per our data, and we are owed a real equity stake.
So a lot of this sounds great, Morgan, but again, going back to philosophically, how do we make people do this? And is it a good idea to move towards this system through a system of mandates?
I think it's another example of what has good intentions doesn't always have great outcomes and great results. I mean, it's the same thing with raising the minimum wage too high. It's the same thing as national rent control. Just trying to control a private company and individuals' freedom is never going to work out. And it's really sad that they will do anything in the name of progress when really this is going to impact people's ability to pay bills.
I agree with her. I don't know who they are, et cetera. I would say the best way to bring this into structure is to build it into the corporate structure. The best way to, bring a data dividend into real life is to build it into the corporate structures by not necessarily legislation, but litigation, arguing the fact that because we have evidence of your personal data being input to the productivity of an institution, that they should indemnify you for your input to productivity.
Why?
It is a regular.
Why would you make them go through
how
this?
conservative the courts are, James.
What do you mean make them go through? It's the way that they distribute warrants, et cetera, right now. Yes, like I think that
you perform a service, you get paid.
So the problem is that people are performing a service also for them. People are
And 4 to 5 people at the company
demand.
like it.
No, so they should keep doing the service, but there's another payment that they're not getting. The problem with automation and how society works right now, and I've seen this in my work over the years, I started my work in autos, for instance. I started as a 20-something. I was being paid $20 an hour. I worked with a guy who was much more...
James, we're out of time. Thank you all for watching. Have a great day.